Hi, my name's Kim. I'm a licensed and nationally certified Chinese medical provider and a Taoist practitioner. And if you're watching this episode, I bet you've been worried about your heart lately. Well, let's start out with, have you been experiencing 2, 3 or more of these symptoms, heart palpitations, where you actually feel the beat of your heart? What about feeling constriction around your chest? And for many of us, it feels like maybe a band is wrapped around your chest. Either way, your lungs, they just don't feel like they can expand. What about shortness of breath? Heaviness on your chest, like something standing on your chest. Trouble sleeping. What about feeling stressed out? So stressed out that you can't seem to be able to relax. What about feeling disconnected about what matters to you most? And then fatigue. You're not alone. Many individuals are experiencing these symptoms right now. And I guess what's different is just how many of us are experiencing them right now. And congratulations to you for being highly motivated to seek answers and to take more control of your health and wellness. So in this episode, what we're going to look at is what might be causing these symptoms and what it means in Chinese medicine and how Chinese medicine deals with it and why. And hopefully by the end of this episode, you can see that this is something that you can take better control of and that you can do to help improve your health. One of the most pressing issues facing you and I right now is the pandemic and how it's changed our immune system. And maybe you've already noticed this in yourself. Maybe you used to never get sick, but you're getting sick now. And over the last 2 years, have you been having more and more health concerns? I thought the RSV infections in 2022 were bizarre. Here's a virus that's been around since the 1950s, and it's never caused such severe infection that it's filled up our pediatric wards, and it rarely jumps into the adult population. So here's this not severe infection, and it fills up the pediatric wards, and it jumps into the adult population. So I want you to think about this. The pandemic is over, but the spike protein is all around us. And that spike protein is the thing that caused all that bad stuff in COVID. So whether you get your spike protein in the environment or you were like me and you got the super jab, that spike protein is all around us. And even though the symptoms that you get with each Omicron variant become milder and milder, the virus has become so much more transmissible, offering you more and more ways to get exposed to more and more of the spike protein. The Senate commissioned a study that they published in April of 2023. It's called the Muddy Waters Report. It gave you and I a lot of foundational information about how this spike protein is impacting our health. So the leading impact from the spike protein is that it causes inflammation in the body and especially in the heart. In Chinese medicine, the spike protein, it would be considered an external pathogen. And it's an external pathogen because it's something outside of us that gets inside of us and starts attacking our health. Now, in Chinese medicine, there's very specific ways about how you should address external pathogens. Let me ask you this. How many of you have gone on medications over the past year? Or maybe you've been experiencing more and more health symptoms and they just keep on increasing as more time goes by. What about, have you had surgeries that maybe address your immune system, like getting your tonsils or your adenoids removed? Maybe you've had heart surgeries like getting a pacemaker or getting stents. Maybe cancer. So here's what I'm saying. The reality is the pandemic has changed our immune systems in ways we can't even begin to understand. it might be another 10 years before we even start to understand all the impacts that this virus has had on our health, our lives, the environment, and wildlife. Let's look at the spike protein and how, from a science perspective, it could cause these symptoms and what that means from a Chinese medical perspective, and how in Chinese medicine, the way to treat an external pathogen is to find ways to help pull it out of your body. If I go back to that Muddy Waters report from the Senate that was released in April of 2023, it was great at helping me understand why the spike protein, and the spike protein is not the virus, it's that little hook on the surface of the virus, and it attaches the virus to our cells, and how that hook was the most dangerous part of the virus. And that's what the Muddy Waters report helped me to understand. And the spike protein, it had all these unique features. That spike protein, it would connect to the cell and it would infect the cell, enabling the cell to make something like 10 million more baby spike proteins. So it's not like a 1-to-1 relationship. It's like a 1 to 10 million relationship. It's kind of beyond exponential. Because that spike protein is this foreign invader, your immune system pops up and gets into gear. The thing is, right now, we have this constant ability to be reinfected with the spike protein because it's all around us. And with each new variant of Omicron, our body gets reintroduced to the new spike protein. It's like this chronic infection, like this chronic autoimmune infection, except it's outside of us. And what else have we found out about COVID? Well, we also found out that COVID doesn't have an off season. So other natural viruses and bacteria in the world, they all have this off season, right? So the flu, it starts in the winter and it ends in early spring of the following year. But COVID doesn't have a season. It's year round. It doesn't care about the weather. And the current research suggests that 50% of people with an active infection, they're completely asymptomatic. The rest of us, allergies, right? And it's mild enough that most of the time it feels just like allergies. And sometimes it isn't mild. But the thing is, every time the spike protein enters our body, it causes damage. And the research indicates the areas that it loves to cause damage the most is going to be the lungs and the heart. So now we're at Chinese medicine and the lung and the heart. And in Chinese medicine, like Western medicine, disease and illness is identified from the symptoms. So remember those symptoms that I mentioned at the beginning of this episode? Let's break them up between the heart and the lung symptoms in Chinese medicine. So if we're going to look at the heart is going to have the heart palpitations, the trouble sleeping, feeling stressed out and not being able to relax, feeling disconnected from what matters to you most, and fatigue. The other symptoms are associated with the lungs, which is the constriction in the chest, the shortness of breath, heaviness in your chest, and fatigue. And the fatigue from this can be really severe. That's the lung symptoms. And the lungs move oxygen around the body, and the body needs oxygen for energy. So in Chinese medicine, you would call that energy qi. And okay, if you wanted to get really technical, the lung qi is called the da qi, and it needs to combine with qi from other organs to move it out into the body. And when it combines, then it can move out and around the body. So this qi that's combined, that moves around the body, that's called zhongqi. So fatigue at this stage, when your zhongqi is weak, is pretty severe. And that probably makes sense now, right? Because it's a bit about oxygen and the lack of oxygen properly filling up your body. So there we have it. In Chinese medicine, everything in your body is related to each other, and any dysfunction in one area can lead to dysfunction in another area, right? So if there's this weakness in the lungs, and these lungs are so critical for bringing oxygen to the rest of the body, if there's a weakness in the lungs, it's going to impact the amount of oxygen and the capacity of the lungs. And that's going to impact the heart and the zhongqi, right? The zhongqi that it can distribute throughout the body. The first heart symptoms that you might notice would be those heart palpitations. And then the next thing might be trouble sleeping. And then maybe a nervousness, anxiety, or stress. If you look at all this information, it suggests that there's a natural progression to this type of disease. It started in the lungs and then it expanded to the heart. And from a Chinese medical and a Taoist perspective, that suggests that there's a natural way to correct this. Let's look at an example. You know that feeling of not being able to relax? Well, let's say that you deal with that first. Well, you can. And the problem is that everything that caused you to get to that point where you can't relax is still happening. So you might feel better for a minute, but it all comes back. And so that's one of the things about this, what's going on right now, is it's more of a process instead of a destination. So you might want to get to that destination of being able to relax, but unless you go through the process, you might not get there, right? Because the thing that caused this all to happen is still happening. And the other part of why you might want to look at where this originated is because the part that's been exposed the longest is going to have the most damage. So two things about starting with the lungs is it's been there the longest. And if you don't correct the lungs, what's caused the cascade, the waterfall of health symptoms, it's still there. And it's going to continue to cascade. Now, there's another part of this in Chinese medicine. So when it's an external pathogen, the goal in Chinese medicine is always to figure out a way to push it back out of the body. And so let's think about that for a minute, because what if these symptoms for a majority of us or for some of us are really being caused by the spike protein? Well, what ends up happening is that as you progress and you get worse, you might go on medications. And when you go on medications, what do medications do? They do what they're supposed to do. They suppress the symptoms. But even when you suppress the symptoms, it doesn't change what's causing the disease. And, that's probably that's been always the push in holistic medicine, right? Hey, why you want to do holistic medicine is you want to correct what's causing the problem. And the thing is, most people are like, yeah, but that's a lot of work, okay? I mean, just saying, a lot of work, not really up for it right now. And that's true. That's a valid response. The big difference is, when our lifestyle and our eating changes were impacting our health in the past, it was taking it like 30, 40, 50 years to cause our death. And that's the difference that we're seeing right now with the spike protein is the progression is a lot faster. And so the fact that Western medicine has never addressed the cause of disease is right now one of its greatest weaknesses. So there's this thought that, okay, you take medication, let's say it was for high blood pressure, because that seems to be one of the most common medications being prescribed today. And I would like to see how in the last year, the number of high blood pressure medications have increased over maybe like an average over the last decade or so, and see what kind of increase there is on that. But that's the most common medication I'm seeing in clinic. Everybody's going on these high blood pressure meds. And the thing that is really good is it gets your blood pressure under control, but it didn't address what was causing the damage. So the spike protein is causing this damage. And let's say that, a new variant comes around and it's infecting the whole population, and you get the asymptomatic infection. And that means more spike protein is doing the damage that caused the high blood pressure in the first place. And at some point in time, it's probably going to be fairly quickly, like within a year, you're going to find that your blood pressure is going to break through the medications, and you're going to need more medications to manage that. Now, there's another aspect of this, though. If the spike protein, it doesn't just cause high blood pressure. The spike protein causes a whole lot more things. So, one of the easiest episodes to review to get an understanding of what it causes is the 5 ways that the spike protein causes you harm on my channel. So the thought is that, yeah, you can take medications to suppress the symptoms. Super effective method of dealing with this in the past because disease was progressing so slowly. Today, that disease might be on superdrive and it might be progressing super fast. So if you don't try to find a way to start pulling that spike protein out, or try to find ways to neutralize it when you get hit with someone's spike protein or spike protein in the environment, you might find that your disease starts progressing fairly rapidly. Now, that's just some thoughts. Whether it's true or not, I'm pretty sure Western science would say that's not true. And especially because of the controversy around all of this, they would scream, that's not true, and that's okay. But it's your health, and so you might want to try something different. Now, let's say you're kind of going, okay, I hear what you're saying, and it seems kind of reasonable, but can I get more information? Well, hey, you know what? I've got a free download for you that there should be a link at the end of this video or in the video description below. And it's just an outline of the different ways or the different symptoms that we can experience that can be from the spike protein. And it gives you some ideas of how to identify it in your body and where you can go after that to figure out, well, okay, what if I wanted to try some holistic alternative methods to help repair and rebuild my body? What is it that I can do, and where can I find that information? Okay, so I hope this helps you guys out a bit. And until next time, I'll catch you on the other side.